We're here at the Mercy University Music Podcast with Stephen B. Ward.
Hello.
Thank you for being here today, Steve.
My pleasure.
I have known you 20 years now this September.
Wow.
I was saving that for the pod, but
Wow.
20 years now.
Wow, that's right.
Which is pretty wild.
You were my student
Yes.
back in 2005.
That's it.
That's crazy.
2005. I think you taught Audio 1 at that point. I would imagine.
I'm sure I did, yeah.
Not on Pro Tools.
No.
We didn't use Pro Tools.
Did we use DTRS back then, the Tascam tape decks?
We used DA88s,
Yeah.
and we recorded on that. We didn't use Pro Tools till the second year.
Unbelievable.
Amazing. But this is not about that. This is about you. You're our fifth guest right now. This is amazing. Thank you for being here.
My pleasure.
But I think it would be a great insight for us and for our students and anyone listening to kind of hear about the musical journey of Steve Ward. So,
Sure.
What's your earliest kind of musical nugget that this is what I want to, or this is what interests me, or this is what I like?
It's music is innate. And I can remember when I was 6, my parents got a piano, and that quickly became my favorite thing to do, was to sit down at the piano and try to figure out melodies and play back what I heard. And, it's something I've always done, and I kept after. By the time I was 13, I was already playing in bands. So, just exploring the musical ideas and notes fitting against each other that really, I still use that stuff today. So,
are you studying music when they get the piano right away, and you're studying, or you just kind of?
I really did piano study when I was about 13.
Okay,
so that's when I took formal lessons. Both my parents played piano. My mother was actually a pretty good pianist, and they both played by ear, although my dad could read music. In grammar school, you take music classes, but in 5th grade, I picked up the flute because we had a flute at home. And so studied that and, played flute all through middle school and got pretty good at it. And then when we got to high school, we didn't need a flute. So I switched to tuba. So among the many instruments I played flute, I played oboe, I played tuba, trombone, a little bit of trumpet, I play rhythm guitar, but primarily my main instrument is keyboards.
Yeah.
And singing.
Yeah. And would you, I know, not to spoil later, do you view that as keyboard, or do you view that as a different instrument completely?
Well, it comes out of synthesis, so I guess it's all kind of a piece. I mean, obviously, I don't play it with a keyboard, so it's a new kind of instrument to explore.
Yeah.
I don't just do Eurorack. I do a lot in Ableton Live or in Reason, and that stuff's mostly keyboard based. So,
I see it as an extension.
It's another tool.
Like the guitar pedals it's still guitar, but they're making different noises. Amazing. So incredible instruments. And you were arranging for big band as well. But was that later in college, or was that still in high school?
So I had done a little bit of in high school. So I was actually joined the high school stage band when I was in 8th grade, because I guess they needed a good keyboard player. So I played electric piano in that, and I wrote a couple of things for that group. But I really started doing that more after I graduated high school. I did take private lessons in composition from a jazz educator, Lewis Porter, and he was I went to Tufts University for a while, and he was the stage band director there, and also at Brandeis. So I ended up writing commissioned pieces for both orchestras.
That's amazing.
Which was fun. Yeah, it was, big band is a lot of work because you've got like 17 different instruments. And
I don't want to gloss over this. Yeah. That's an enormous amount of work.
Yeah.
And you started doing that in high school.
Yeah, I'd taken some music theory in high school, and my high school band had a 4-piece horn section. So I had absolutely written for saxes and trumpets by the time I had graduated high school. So, it's just one of those things that just I continued to do. Someday I'll get back to it, but it's been a while.
Yeah, I've never arranged for big band. I guess the closest would be like some string ensembles, but that sounds very daunting to someone like me. But I guess it's not that different than your MIDI.
Not really. Later, and this actually infuses my work with MIDI in that You need to know instrument ranges.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're going to write a MIDI score for film and you write in a range that an instrument can't play, it's not going to sound right.
Yeah.
So, there are a lot of instruments in the orchestra and in jazz ensembles, and you learn them and what their capabilities are, and you stick with it.
But you're showing up to rehearsals, you're playing live,
Yep.
you're learning all those skill sets. Those are huge. You can't, we were talking off air before, like being in your first bands, you learn so much.
Just how to deal with people.
Yeah. And people are dependent on you to bring your tuba or your keyboard or whatever it is. So those skill sets that you learned obviously still support you today. So you famously talk about your 7-year college career.
Yes.
Is that so? Because
9 really, but who's
9?
counting?
Okay, so 9. Even I thought it was 7. Not to put you on the
quick.
Yeah, I was going to say because
right.
you've said this to students coming in that you were on the 9-year plan.
And I share the story because what matters is that you complete, not that how long it takes. And I had a couple of false starts, and I tried a few things. So I graduated high school in 78. I didn't get into the one college I applied to, MIT. I don't know why. But I didn't really have the grades for MIT. So I took half a year off, and I started at Tufts University where they had an electrical engineering program. I was sort of interested in that. I definitely was interested in instruments and electronics, but I think that was, my parents really wanted me to get a career, and music wasn't a career. So I did that for a while, and I just was completely way behind the other people in the program who, went to technical high schools and really knew engineering and had started a half a year before me. So I just I was not happy there. And I switched to a dual major with music, and then eventually just a music major over the course of like a year and a half. So it had 3 majors there. And then I transferred to Berkeley.
Yeah.
And in Berkeley, I was able to study jazz composition and arranging, which I really loved. And it was an extension of the big band stuff I've been doing at Tufts and Brandeis. But then just, my parents got divorced. Just like, I was supporting myself. I kind of lost interest in school. So I took 3 years off and played in a rock band, And keyboards. Yep. And singing and writing most of the songs for that ensemble. It was a group called the Acrylics.
Yeah.
And we did okay in the Boston area. It was, pop. We played a lot of places. We opened for some cool artists, but that sort of ran its course. I did a little solo thing for a while, and then eventually went back to Berkeley.
What's the solo thing? Is it solo singing, piano, keyboards?
No, it was me playing rhythm guitar and singing. It's crazy.
I've known 20 years and I'm learning something right now.
I find that like when I sit down at a keyboard and write, I'll either write something very electronic, or I'll write something very jazzy.
Okay.
And when I sit with a guitar, which is not my normal instrument, and I'm basically just a rhythm guitarist, I would play rock and roll chords. So it was really great for writing rock and roll and pop songs.
I feel the same way about piano, like the reverse, because I'm mainly a guitarist, but when I'm on piano, I have to do cowboy chord, triad, whatever.
It's a great technique is to play an instrument that you don't really play, to do what you can do in that instrument, and then the ideas are really strong. So I did that for a while, and then
amazing. But
I went back to Berkeley, and at that point they'd started the music production and engineering program. I got in the 3rd class that they had there. And this was very new. There were maybe 5 schools across the country teaching audio as a formal degree education. And so I started back there in 85 and finished in 87.
Okay.
So from 78 to 87 is 9 years. It was a storied career, but I turned out okay.
Yeah, I think it's a beautiful story. And whenever you tell students that, they're like, oh, wow, it's like, you don't have to have your journey exactly mapped out. And maybe if you didn't take that 3 years off, maybe you wouldn't even be doing this, right?
And I gained so much from those 3 years off. I mean, just playing and I took when I went back to school, I didn't play in a band for about 13 years. But, I always loved performing and getting out in front of people, playing songs, original material. Yeah. And so it was very easy to pick that up in my late 30s and do that for another 10 years. So
So at Berkeley at that time, what are some, we don't have to talk too long about it, but what are some of the technology you're learning at that moment?
So it was all tape-based.
Mm-hmm.
They had a course. I didn't take it on digital audio. It was so new.
It'll never stick around.
This is a fad. It will never do anything. And what the digital audio class was they had a box that was an interface, and you could record the digital signal on videotape. And then you had to, I guess, edit the videotape. I'm not even really sure how they did that. And then, play it back. But it was very, very crude digital technology at the time. But yeah, so analog tape recording, which was great. One of the courses I took probably the first week I was there was on how to align an analog tape machine. And I turned that into a job that I held all through college, aligning cassette decks for a duplicator across the street from the college. Amazing. So I put myself through school. It was financially, I lived pretty cheaply.
Again, another similarity to a lot of our students may not know that. I mean, that's probably very similar to our students.
I ate a lot of tuna fish. And I got like 10 sandwiches out of it, one can.
How much, I wanted to ask you this before. Before Berkeley, how much recording did you do? Did you know about? Did you have?
So in my high school band, we'd done a fair amount of 4-track recording. I mean, we always rented people's time. So like a guy had a 4-track tape deck and we'd record. And the last project we did, we went into a professional studio that had 8-track.
Whoa.
Woohoo! And it was good, and we had a very good engineer, Darlene Wilson, I think was her name. But I was very frustrated with it because already I was thinking like a producer, and there were sounds I wanted to convey, and I didn't know how to articulate that at all.
Yeah.
So actually going to college really helped with that and helped me with being able to be in command of the studio. So I'd done some in high school when I was playing in the acrylics and writing songs. I did a lot of cassette-to-cassette demo creation. Yeah. Just, the sort of the classical overdubbing where you lay down a track, you put that in a playback deck, you mix something new in as you copy it. And, by the end of it, the track sounds like this.
Yeah.
But, it really helped me think about production and learn, the techniques and the tools that way. And that was fun during college, too, because I was able to learn something in class and then kind of apply it as on my home studio. It was no, great shakes, but it's how you learn.
Yeah.
And then after Berkeley, I worked as the night and weekend studio manager for a year. And then
at Berkeley.
Yeah. And then I got a job at Power Station. So I moved on a weekend to New York.
I mean, that's
on the strength of a bagel.
That's a big deal.
Yeah. Right? I made a life decision.
Yeah. Tell me about that. Like, what does that life decision feel like when you're,
So my best friend from college had taken a job as an assistant engineer at the Power Station, which is a top 5 studio in New York, legendary place, amazing acoustic, great equipment, well-maintained. And they were looking for a maintenance engineer. And Aaron knew that I had been working at the tape complex doing the alignments there. And he said, come down for an interview. So I interviewed. We sat in Riverside Park and had the most amazing bagel ever. And it was a beautiful, May, 31st Memorial Day weekend.
Yeah.
And
nice
I was
weekend usually.
And it's the best weather in New York. And I said, I'm going to take the job if I'm offered. And I was, and I worked there very hard, 3 years. There were some weeks I worked 60, 80 hours.
Yeah. And what kind of things are you fixing there?
So every session you had to align the analog tape decks before the session. You also had to, you have a module of the console, and it was a modular console. So you could unscrew a particular module, pull it out, and bring it to the shop, put in a replacement module so the session could continue. And then, I wasn't really a troubleshooting tech. My knowledge of electronics wasn't enough that I could necessarily fix things. I mean, I could see if there was a broken solder joint or a blown component and replace that. But but, just being able to keep the session running was really important because the clients are paying $300 plus an hour.
Sure.
So I did a lot of that, and there'd always be a project. We put in a new studio when I was there, so that involved dragging a lot of cables over the roof of the studio, crawling through the ductwork and dragging cables. And then we had a patch bay that had over 1,000 patch points on it. So that all had to get wired, and I mean, it's a huge deal.
Yeah.
Huge deal. So that was a fun experience. But, I worked there really, very hard. I was making $7.50 an hour, which was twice what the assistant engineers were making because they were getting minimum wage. But the hours were just killing me. So I got an offer to teach at a local trade school. And because of my experience at Power Station, I knew how to synchronize multi-track tape decks. So I was teaching audio for video essentially there. Amazing. And with all the synchronization piece of it. And I was like making double the money, working half the time. And I was like, I'd rather do this. Is
that Center for Media Arts?
Center for Media Arts, yeah. And that had a really great run. We had great people, including people I work with now. Paul Steinman was there. Steve Lucera was there. People who've worked here in the past as well. David Sanders is over now at Montclair State. Really great group of guys. Yeah. And, but it just all of a sudden went belly up because they had a lot of students who never paid their debts, and the government cracked down, and, the money was due, and it closed overnight. So taught at IAR for a while, Institute of Audio Research. Also did some karaoke.
Backing tracks, right?
Yeah. So my job there was really as a trainer. So we had it was a MIDI-based project, and we had a particular synthesizer. It was essentially 2 TG300s in a box. That it was a proprietary box for the karaoke company. Okay. And the idea was, if you were in a bar, you'd have a catalog, you'd pick the 4-digit code of the song you wanted, and then it would play over high-speed phone lines as a MIDI file into the box.
Whoa.
As all centralized. And what was great for the bar owners, you didn't have to have a closet full of discs with the songs on there.
Right. Wow.
And the other thing is because it's MIDI, you could transpose it to any key.
Whoa.
So we did about 3,000 songs in a year for our client in Tokyo. And
that's pretty wild.
So I was both training people. I was also quality control. So, we worked with maybe about 40, 50 top MIDI programmers in New York. Some of them were amazing. Some of them, were not the greatest arrangers or needed some help with this, or, they didn't hear a part right. So I would go and fix it and help them get a better mix or whatever.
Yeah. So how long did you do that for?
I did that for about 1.5 years.
Oh, okay.
And I made so much money. It paid for my wedding and my Swiss honeymoon.
Oh, so
amazing. I made more money that year until about 5 years ago.
Amazing.
So,
amazing. But you're teaching at that time. So you're teaching at the time, and you're doing that.
Yeah, I was kind of taken off some time from IR to do this project. But then when that ended, I went back grudgingly, tail between my legs, back to IR, which, IR was fine. And there were some great guys there that I taught with as well. But it felt a little bit more like a factory. It's a trade school. Right. So, diploma mill, I think, would be the term. It's closed now, so I can say that. But then while I was there the second time, I got the offer from Paul to come up and teach here. It was the second year of the music technology program here. So 1998, I taught here 3 years part-time, and then a full-time position opened up, and I applied and got it, and I've been teaching here since 2001 full-time. So
amazing.
Quite a career.
Yeah, and it's easy to gloss over the amount of moves and studio builds and offices. I think
it's a twisty road.
Yeah, it's a very twisty road.
And you wear a lot of hats, and the more things you can do. I mean, I did a lot of one-off jobs. I wrote big band music for a show in Atlantic City at the Trump casino when it was down there. Yeah.
You got a Trump casino story.
Oh my God.
Oh my goodness.
Yep.
That's amazing. But so that brings you to when you're here. You're playing in bands though at this time too?
Sure. So, after the birth of my first son, 98, I started performing with a brother, someone I worked with at Power Station, who had done a couple of, things with, but we put together a band and had a good run playing in New York. Did 2 albums with them. And
this is Uncle Izzy?
Uncle Izzy,
okay.
yep. And
on the right track.
Yeah, so that was fun. And then the bass player of that band had been a student of mine at IAR. And then he formed another band called The Beeps. So initially I did some mixing and engineering with them and eventually joined the band on keyboards and vocals. And that was a very fun project.
Yeah.
And I've gotten a couple of other projects through him. I did this reggae artist, Mimi Maura, who is really well known in Argentina and Puerto Rico. She does reggae in Espanol. Really great stuff. But when they would come to New York, they needed a pickup band. So,
right.
And I must have played with her like a dozen times. Yeah. So
amazing.
It was a fun gig.
And there's one more band on here that we didn't. What's this one?
Lulu Lewis. So yes.
Lewis.
So again, through Pablo, my former student at IR, who I'd been in several groups with. This is a project. They're still around. He's with his wife, is the singer, Dylan Hundley, and they do original rock material. So I was with them for a short time, and
nice.
Yeah, so it was fun.
And we're missing a band on here. You're in another band.
I'm in another band, The Quest for Authenticity, which we did a couple years ago with Kevin Farrell and yourself.
Yeah, that was amazing.
And I look forward to doing more stuff.
People do more. That was fun. Fun. We can. The album hopefully will be out by the time this is out. Maybe not though. We'll see. It's out. We have CDs.
We have CDs. We're
digital though.
We're just kind of exploiting it that way, and then we'll be getting it streaming soon.
But it was a 1-day recording.
Yep.
Was it 2 summers ago? No, 2 years ago.
It was 2023.
And
June 28th.
You're on piano and you're
modular synth and piano. And then Kevin on acoustic bass and Sam over here on the electric guitar that sounds like pipe organ. And pedal board and the whole nine yards.
And it sounds amazing and you mix the hell out of it. But what people may not know is we didn't even speak words to each other. We just got into a room and just started making noise and
we
pressed
set
record.
A date.
We set a date and time.
That's the length of our preparation for it. Yeah, no, it was but what was nice is that, and what was great working with you and Kevin is you listen and I listen. Mm-hmm. And, I'm at a stage in my life now where it's much more important for me to listen to the other musicians than to do whatever I'm doing.
Yeah.
And I think that humility is what really makes the piece interesting. Like people could drop out for a while. Let those two guys do it. All right, now I'm going to do something with you. Now I'm going to do something with Kevin.
Yeah.
And in addition to your guitar, you have a couple of synths going along, and I have the option of doing modular synth and piano. At one point I even sang.
Yeah.
So it was a surprising amount of sound for 3 people playing live. No overdubs. No edits.
Well, I think even when we were doing it, I imagined we would cut whole. There's an hour of music, and that's literally the beginning to the end of the session. But even while we were doing it, the reason I think I felt we didn't feel any like fear around it was like, oh, we'll just cut it here. We'll stop it.
Right.
But what was so special is that it did end up being this 1 hour of, and we didn't even plan for it to be an hour either. I think it's like, was it 67 minutes actually, right?
60, yeah, 7
We just we're like, no, this feels like a good time to stop.
Exactly.
I'm hungry. I could use some water. but the listening and we really were just jamming and trying something out, and we didn't really know what we were getting out of it. I feel like, and I don't know if everyone knows that about that session.
I think it's the remarkable thing about it is that, and in terms of producing the record, I really tried to mix it in a way to preserve that. Yeah. I mean, we definitely used the mute switch and took things out, or there's a bad note here or there. We really didn't move notes around. We didn't overdub anything.
Yeah.
I didn't shorten any of the pieces, but it was that process of discovering what the music is about, I think, is what's the revelatory about the record, is just that you're witnessing that process, and it's really a document. It's like a documentary record in a way of that going down. And so, yeah, I mean, I think, if we do more stuff as that ensemble, we might do more prepared pieces.
Yeah, it's almost nerve-wracking to do more because that worked out so well that day that it's like, how are we going to top that? But I think we will in different ways. So that'll be very exciting. Okay, so you're teaching here. But you also were getting a master's at some point in there too.
I did.
Go to NYU.
So while I was here teaching part-time, Paul Steinman said to me, if you had a master's, I could offer you a full-time position.
Smart guy, that Paul.
And, when you're a part-time teacher and you teach, a course here or there, at one point I was teaching 3 different schools, Mercy and the new school and IER. And, you're getting like a couple thousand for each course, but you're only there like 3 hours at this school per week and 3 hours at that school per week. So, I mean, I looked, actually was going through some boxes and I saw an old tax return. I think I made $28,000 back then. So, yeah, I mean, to come on board, even as a lowly music professor, which is not a well-paying position among professors, I mean, I doubled my money coming full time. I work a lot harder at this job, but we've done good things in this program.
Yeah. So. And you were the second ever director of the program. I mean, it's amazing. I mean, we've been a program. It'll be 30 years in 2027, and I mean,
yeah. And then at the time there were, we were 2 people, Paul Steinman and myself, plus some part-time people. Yeah. And so, I've had a lot of influence in the curriculum and the educational direction of the program. We've really tried to balance both the recording arts, the engineering, audio engineering side with the music production side. So, our students get music theory. We make them do electronic music performance and things like that.
No, I mean, there's so many parts of the program that I see that even Paul's there's things that they're still like, oh, that was Paul. That's why that's there, and the same with you, and that's why that vision is here. And even with Kessler and everybody else, it's amazing to see everyone's collaboration in the school and making it. Even someone like Aaron, who's running the sound and cameras, like playing roles in now, and I mean, seeing that arc. I mean, I've seen a long arc, but you've seen even longer here. It's amazing to see the shifts and changes, and even being open to going, okay, we have to just teach Ableton now. We didn't, being open to receive these new things, and
the field changes, and you have to keep up with it. Yeah,
and I think I'm so happy that you're pro that, because not every music school is, not every vocational program is like that.
We've been fortunate here. I mean, if you look at a lot of state universities, they have great facilities, amazing facilities. They have all kinds of money to put into capital projects like building a recording studio complex. They have very little money for operating those programs. So when you're running a program that's so dependent on software, how do you keep your software up to date? That costs money. Yeah. It's a significant amount of money, right? And, Sam, to your credit, you've really upped the quality of the equipment that we had here. We started on a complete shoestring in White Plains. We were in a basement. One year we had to close because there was a sewage flood in the basement. Yeah. Just like you wouldn't believe, Paul Steinman at one point was sleeping in the studio. It was just, it was really, fly by night. But we've been fortunate that our students pay a program fee, and we've been able to use that to really give back to them the kind of equipment, the kind of studio availability that we think they deserve. So,
yeah. Do you see any similarities in music school now versus when you were in music school? Any similarities or even differences? Like, what comes to mind at those gaps?
When you say music school,
like we're a music production school. I mean, you were a music production student at one point. So does it feel the same, or is it totally different?
It feels different. First of all, Berklee is world renowned, both as a jazz school, but now I think just as a school for professional musicians. Everyone there was getting a music degree or a music diploma. They had a lot of students who showed for a year but didn't finish a degree, but learned really, useful basic skills as musicians. But, you would walk in the studio and, Layla Hathaway was someone I recorded. I had Makoto Ozoni, who's a very famous jazz pianist, in my arranging class, David Way, who just won a Grammy for Weird Al Yankovic, was one of my classmates. It's like you just the quality of the people there in terms of their musicality, their music skills was very high. This program's a Bachelor of Science. We do teach music theory. We don't assume a prior musical background. And I think, our students do really well. But it's a little different approach than a music school with a recording major. We're a music production major in a liberal arts school. So it's just a little different that way. Yeah.
Nice. That's good insight. All right, we got a couple questions we've gone through for the podcast in general. Can you speak about influences maybe now, like influences musically now, like what you're thinking?
Everything influences me, and I know it's a stupid answer because I was really into jazz as a kid. I listened to a lot of classical music. I'd be 8 and I'd be pretending I had a baton listening to the symphony. And, I just listened to everything. Gospel. I was a huge fan of Philly Soul, huge fan of Ohio Players and Earth, Wind & Fire and a bunch of 70s funk bands. Huge fan of 60s British Invasion and the Beatles, of course. And in the 70s, I was into fusion. So I saw Jean-Luc Ponty. Do you know him?
No.
He's a jazz violinist who did this fusion music. It's amazing.
Sounds incredible.
And then 1978 came around and punk was the new thing, a new age. And I got really into that. And you encounter so many different musics. I think, my particular bent on all of this, Sam, is I approach music from an orchestration arrangement perspective. And that informs my work as a music producer, because I'm thinking about how can we arrange this band so that it works, better, or, the piano is where the vocal range is. Let's put the piano up an octave or whatever, tricks and tips that you do. And when I listen to music, I'm always deconstructing it.
Yeah.
I'm picking it apart, not in a negative way. It doesn't take away my joy from listening to it, but I want to know how it was constructed.
Yeah.
And that, I think really does inform my teaching and the way I approach the music I work on. So
there's always, when I walk up to your office, there's always something playing, but it could be anything. It could be anything like you just mentioned. And it's not always like that. It's not always, I like to have music playing, but I think you probably listen to more. You listen to a lot of music, which I think is amazing.
I love bluegrass.
Yeah.
I'm not a huge country fan, but I love bluegrass. I love, old school hip hop. I love, I wouldn't say I'm a big Broadway person, but every now and then there's a show that, is really worthwhile.
Wicked was pretty awesome. I don't know if you heard the Wicked musical, but it's pretty great.
It's great.
All right, music books. Any music books you think like you are must reads? I know there's probably a long list, but like any come right to your mind. I have two that I just read. I could mention, but
yeah. And so and as I was coming up, there were books we read because they were what was available. Like John Warham had a book on audio, but I think it's probably tremendously out of date. There was a great live sound reinforcement handbook put out by Yamaha. Gary Davis was the author. Again, kind of out of date, but really great. For my study, when I went to grad school and I studied, film scoring, also really got heavily into electronic music then. Curtis Rhodes wrote the computer music tutorial, I think, or the computer music handbook, which is a fantastic book that really goes into different methods of synthesis. So that's been really influential. There's so much out there.
Yeah.
I mean, where do you start?
Yeah. No, that's fine. That's a good
I read
answer.
a lot of manuals, and I watch a lot of YouTube tutorials these days on, people using equipment, and that has been very inspiring.
I don't know when it was, but at some point it was like, yeah, you got to just read the manual. I probably learned that from you. It's
yeah.
Like, you have questions about this? Oh, yeah, you probably should just, did you read the manual? Oh, you didn't.
And I still do it because, there's details in the manual that aren't obvious.
Yeah.
And that, really kind of give you that fine-tuned understanding. I will share a story of one thing I did as an undergrad. So we had a particular console. It was made by Sound Workshop, I think. And in one of our classes, we were learning the signal flow of how the analog console used to work. So I got a flow chart of that console, and I put it up on my wall. And every night I would look at it and just try to mentally work through all the different signal flow permutations, because consoles back in those days were all analog and they had switches. So you could configure it one way for tracking session. You could configure it a completely different way for a mixing session. So there was a lot to do to understand that. So, I mean, I was fortunate to get a really good basis in audio and gate staging and signal flow and patch bays. That, certainly served me at a place like Power Station doing maintenance and has helped me as a teacher too.
Sure. Amazing.
So,
all right. You have any hot takes in audio? Like this is from an Aaron question. Like he hates space pair for overheads. He just doesn't like them.
Okay.
Like anything that like is a norm that you're like, I think like, well, we've seen audio confrontations happen on the internet. Like everything has to be recorded at 192 or so,
well,
anything
first
like
of all,
that.
yes, I'll go on record. 192, why?
Mm-hmm.
There's no reason. And here's the rationale why 96 is okay. 48 is probably fine. 96, I would do professionally. 192, never. The reason is we don't hear up to 96K. So sampling at twice that frequency, which you would need to capture frequencies up to 96,000, there's nothing up there I can hear. Moreover, I don't have a microphone in my mic closet with an extended range above 30,000 hertz. So why would you need to sample that high? So there's that. I also feel similarly about 32-bit float recording. And I'll qualify that by saying, if I were tracking, especially with a field recorder, like I'm going to a live show, 32-bit float recording is great, because if it suddenly gets loud, it's going to compensate that for you. You will never clip your audio. But once it's recorded, it doesn't make any sense. And here's why. Because 32-bit recording has 24 bits of audio and 8 bits which set the gain. So your 32-bit float recording is really a 24-bit recording with a variable gain function. So you're not going to get the added resolution you would think that 8 bits is going to give you. What the 8 bits give you is the ability to never distort.
Yeah.
So, again, I appreciate it as a field recorder kind of thing, or your basic tracking. Once you're in Pro Tools and you're mixing, you're editing, you're mastering, you don't need it. 24-bit is much quieter than the human ear will ever detect. So.
Nice. These are great. These are good ones. What are some? We're in the box now. We mastered analog on the Quest album, but we're mostly in the box. What are some either brands or plugins that you find yourself always kind of returning to? I think our students might like to know.
Yeah, I'm going to disappoint everybody.
Oh, no.
I really love the stock plugins in Pro Tools.
It's great.
They're clean.
Yeah.
They sound good. I know how to use them. I also have Waves, and there's some Waves things I've really liked. There's a couple things like Mondo Mod, which I think are very esoteric, but they're kind of cool.
Yeah.
And I've loved the L1, L2 Ultra Maximizers. And I'll use the H comp and the H reverb and the Renaissance compressor is amazing. So there's a few things there. One of my pet peeves here is, opening up the plugin list and there's 3,000 plugins.
Yeah.
I mean,
I hear you.
The problem with that is how do you choose? And this is like also what I call the tyranny of the blank canvas. If you buy a piece of canvas and you put it on your easel, well, now what?
Mm-hmm.
What am I going to do with that? And, you have to make choices.
Yeah.
And I think often, and this is something I definitely do in my electronic music practice, and I teach this way, it's like, let's do all of the music with just this one synth.
Yeah.
Let's see what we can do with this before we start mixing and matching.
Yeah.
Picasso had his blue period where he just used the color blue to paint, and he did amazing works by limiting himself.
Mm-hmm.
And so that, I think, is an important thing to understand. It does you no good to buy Waves and Native Instruments and Slate Digital and, McDisp and, Sound Toys and all these things. And now I have 10,000 or 8,000 plugins I have to learn. Yeah. It doesn't make any sense.
That's a lot.
And no offense to you, Sam.
Oh, no. I think you'd be surprised. I mean, I work off my template and I use a lot of the same things on everything, every mix.
You find that thing
it's a lot faster.
Works.
I have a template. Everyone knows this. That works. The RC comp is like, that's not like 80% of compression I do is probably the RC comp. Like
it's fantastic.
a $29 Waves plugin that is amazing.
And I love the 1176 for certain things, and I love the distressors for certain things.
Yeah, I think because we're a school. I like having lots because we get a lot of sessions from other people, a lot of collaborations.
I get it.
We have pretty much everything that you would use.
Right.
But yeah, students come up and inevitably we have almost every plugin you can buy. Maybe not software instrument wise, but like major brand plugin, and inevitably there's still somebody like, hey, I want this thing.
Right.
And I always ask what it is, and I look and I go, well, we probably have something that can do this. But as it gets more and more popular, maybe I'll consider it kind of situation. Right. But it is tough. But for me, I mean, I use a template for the most part, and I
there's
really like
some really cool things like the split EQ from Eventide or Soothe that are newer plugins that are just okay. This is a different approach.
While you're mixing, you said, "All right, this isn't working. Hey, what do you think about like what compressor do you think for what you do on this?" And you're open to trying new ones too. But for me, it's when I'm mixing, I'm not trying to learn a new plugin. I don't want to learn a new plugin. I want to mix. I want to mix.
Right.
It has to be intuitive.
Well, and you know what works for you, and you want to go to those tools. And I tell this story in my classes. Nobody asked Michelangelo what paintbrush did he use to paint the Sistine Chapel.
Yeah.
I mean, it just doesn't matter.
Yeah.
If you're a painter, you might be curious to know, was it a sable brush or whatever? But what matters is the art, and that's how I feel about plugins. Mm-hmm. Is like when I need to compress a signal, I want to find a compressor that's going to do that for me. And if I don't get the good results of the first one, I'll try something different until I find one that works, and then I'm happy. But it's never for me about the compressor. It's always about the music I'm making and the kind of sound I'm trying to get. So
I think especially I'm extremely hard on like hardware too. Like it always bugs me out when if it's not intuitive or if it's noisy or if it's like, well, if it's not better than a plugin, why am I going to use this?
And I tend to gravitate to one extreme or the other. Like we have a ton of compressors and mic preamps. I would use two of those mic preamps.
Yeah.
I would use the Vintex.
Sure.
And if I want to go really clean, I use the Focusrite.
Mm-hmm.
And those are not the sexiest compressors up there, but they both excel at what they do.
Yeah.
And
preamps. Just for the listeners.
Yeah, sorry. The preamps,
I don't want to get roasted in the comments.
No, and I mean, they're both, if I want something that's got kind of a vintage sound, I'll go with the Vintech. If I want it really clean, I'll go with the Focusrite. And I'm happy with those results.
People get mad at me like, what preamp? I was like, I just love the 1073 on like a lot, like 80% of things, like maybe more. It's just, or Neve style, like the Vintech. Or, I like a Neve style on a lot of things. I like API and drums and guitars. It sounds great, but I never think about gear when I'm making music. You know what I mean? Like this, it's fun to nerd out about it when you're like, looking at the forms and everything. But
I mean, I think microphone choice is still an art.
Yeah.
And you could put a 57 in front of every guitar cab and get a very good sound. But after you've done that 2 times, why not try a 421? Why not try an E609? Or, mix it up.
Yeah.
I've got a couple of old AKG D330s that have a really cool tailorable frequency response, which doesn't sound like a 57 or a 421.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's nice to have some different palettes there.
Totally.
I'm not afraid to mic an acoustic guitar with a dynamic mic if I'm going to place it in the center, and I just want it there for support.
Right.
So sometimes you choose the wrong mic.
Well, that's one of my hot takes is I don't record acoustic guitar stereo most of the time. Most of the time. Unless it's going to be a solo thing. And even then, it's like, it's not really stereo till it blooms out a little bit to me.
Right.
So I may put a stereo room mic on. Like I'm doing a classical guitar album right now. And it's the only instrument.
Yeah.
So for that,
that's a different story. Yeah.
For that, I am doing just stereo room, by the way, not stereo right at the guitar.
Okay.
I'm doing stereo room, and the guy loves it. And this is my third album with him, I think. So it's fine.
But if I were like tracking acoustic guitars and there were also electric guitars in there, I probably would do 3 mono guitars and spread them.
Yeah.
And so I get that sound, that size with multiple takes rather than one huge image.
Oh, just on the pet peeves. So synth patches that are like always stereo, they don't some need to be stereo. But a lot some come stereo. You're like, why is this stereo? They take up a lot of these take up a lot of space, and they don't need to be stereo.
We call it big mono.
Right. Yeah.
And so what you have with a lot of synths, and particularly stuff from hardware synths, is you have like a mono piano that is going into a stereo reverb, and the only part of the effect that's stereo is the reverb.
Mm-hmm.
It's coming out of both channels of your keyboard, but it's the same signal on both.
Yeah.
So, you have to, or people will create a drum set on a synth and everything's panned to the center. So if all the drums are panned to the center, you don't have a stereo drum set.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So.
Yeah. There you go. What's next for you? What are you working on now?
Well, it's interesting. I was actually working on a piece over the weekend that I was really happy with. So I got this synth that I really like. It's called the Labyrinth. It does interface with the modular synth, but it also does some of the sort of random probability-based sequencing that I do with my modular rig.
It's the Labyrinth? Is it?
It's a Moog Labyrinth, yeah. And a YouTuber I watched said, always be recording with this. That's the rule. And so one day I just made, like 7 different pieces, and each, 5 to 10 minutes long, and just recorded them on my Zoom recorder.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next week I did the same thing. And I'm still making music from that session.
Mm.
So I took 2 pieces. One was more percussion oriented, and one was more melodic sequencing. And I just have been having a great time editing those and creating music from these totally random materials. And it just, I don't know, maybe it's just too weird for other people to like, but I think it's really good. And if I think it's really good, then I think I need to share it. So
I think you should share it too. That's another pet peeve of mine. I want to like the music I'm making. Or
right.
Like if it's for you, even if it's just bleeps and bloops or whatever, like there's people that make just white noise music. There's noise artists that are some are interesting, and I'll go to the grave saying that it's music. I will fight for it to be music. May not love every moment of it, but if you like it, then someone else out there in the world will probably like it.
And I try to attend electronic music performances.
Mm-hmm.
I've been doing several in New England, where I'm from originally, and I don't like every artist, but I always get something from somebody. So that's really important. I have no problem if I'm producing somebody trying to create the record they want to make.
Sure. Right.
I don't have to insert myself in that. But what I'm finding now that I'm in my 60s is I'm starting to recognize areas where I have a unique artistic voice, which is something I've always struggled with. I've always been a great number 2 person, a great backup singer, a great keyboardist for your band. And that's fine, and I enjoy that. But I'm exploring things in electronic music that I think are unique. And so, including the Quest, I think it's a pretty unique project.
Absolutely.
So,
and this is some of this music can be found already out, Tundra Ghost, right?
Yeah, you can go to my YouTube page, ProfessorStephenBWard.com, technologist.com, and I'm developing a Thunder Ghost website. It'll be up over the summer that will have a lot of this as well.
And there's some live recordings actually on our YouTube where this will be of you performing. Anything else? I have one other question. Any other thing we want to touch on that we missed?
No, I think we kind of covered a lot of stuff here.
Just one random question was, what's your favorite class to teach here?
That's a really good question. I really enjoy the history of music production and technology.
I thought you'd say that. That was my favorite class that I took from you.
And it's an opportunity to share music from the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. And we've added now this semester quite a bit of hip hop to the course as well.
Which I think is amazing. You have to.
And it's got a dual focus. I mean, it's partly about the history of the music, which, as an educated college student, you should know something about the history of pop music. But also, it's more than a history course. It's a focus on technology. And you asked me about plugins earlier. I don't care. Mm-hmm. It's a tool.
Yeah.
And what I care about is solving the problem that I need the tool to solve. And what's great about this course is you look at people who had very little available. I mean, Sam Phillips of Sun Records recording Elvis, and he had no EQ, no compression. He had 2 tape decks, and he was able to use one of them as a slapback echo effect. And it was revolutionary to creating that sound. And everything was recorded live in his crappy little one-room studio. And he made it work. And it was about the performance. Nobody listens to the sound quality of that recording. So we focus on...
But our art is what we do is always a marriage of technology, though, and music.
Absolutely.
Les Paul comes to mind.
Absolutely.
But I thought you'd say that course, and I loved that course. And I think it's easy... I can understand a 20-year-old, 18-year-old, whoever, whatever age, thinking, I don't need this course.
Right.
But especially now, just and I loved it at the time, but seeing the history and the technology, and these are all our fellow musicians and artists that have been doing this.
100%.
And it's amazing to see how they did it 20 years ago or hundreds of years ago,
Absolutely.
And so I think it's actually one of the most important courses. It's
So I've been involved with a couple of scholarly communities. I'm involved with the AES, Audio Engineering Society. I'm involved with something called In Music, Innovation in Music Conferences. I'm involved with the Society of Music Production and Research, SIMPR. And, they all have kind of a different focus. SIMPR is really focused more on the music production side of things and the history of that. Audio Engineering Society more on the recording engineering side of things. And In Music is kind of somewhere in the middle. But one of the things that we talk about in those communities are affordances, right? And so technology lets you do things. And when you come up with a new technology, it lets you do something that you couldn't do before. So absolutely, the technology informs the music you make. I hear auto-tune and everything, even when there's great singers who don't need it.
Yeah.
That's a pet peeve. But it also allows a lot of people to make music that probably would have no business doing it otherwise, right? But, that technology, love it or hate it, that changed the way we make records. Yep. The fact that Pro Tools was originally 4-track, okay, big deal. But, within 10 years, it became the de facto standard for all recording studios. And, so many people work in the box now. I mean, they don't even know how to work out of the box. Yeah.
That is one downside, too. There's some students who are just afraid of the hardware,
and you probably encounter that teaching the patch bay. It's like, it seems
as much as I'm in the box, I love, I say the patch bay is my instrument. It's Studio A, like people see it like I'm patching. It's like, it looks insane, but it's not really. It's just ins and outs. Yeah.
It's way over the top, but it's not that hard. But it does come from an understanding of signal flow and understanding the task you're trying to do.
I actually love mixing analog. I don't, mainly because of just time and budget.
Yeah.
If I'm being totally honest.
Yeah.
If I were mixing just my own records every day, I'd probably do the analog summing and analog everything. But it's just about, management.
It's nothing better than a 30 IPS half-inch analog tape deck. In my view, it just adds a nice solidity and warmth to your record. But, I also recognize what I put into the digital box comes out sounding exactly like I put it in. So there's something to say for that as well. And a lot of the, emulation plugins really do the job fine.
Steve, tell me about what you did at ARP, because that's an exciting thing as a synth nerd.
Sure.
for me.
So before I got into music production, went to Berkeley and studied that. I had a career as an electronic assembler. I grew up in the Boston area, and there were a lot of electronics companies in that area. And I happened to find a job at ARP Instruments.
Nice.
This would be 78, 79. And it was an interesting time to be there because they had come out with this new product called the Avatar, which was a guitar-based synthesizer. It was essentially an ARP Odyssey with a 6-core pickup that could pick up every string. And it didn't work. It didn't work. They couldn't make it work. Everybody hated it. People returned it. And they just lost a ton of money. And it really started a downward spiral for the company. Jeez. But yeah, I was there and, just doing circuit assembly, but building Odysseys, Axes, 2600s, Avatar. We had another new product called the Quadra, which had 4 different synths, all controlled from the same keyboard. Mm-hmm. Pretty kind of clunky but advanced for its time, but not quite the way we think of like MIDI synths as being able to use them all at the same time. But yeah, it was a great time, and they had a room there that they had all their products in, and after hours, I would rent it for a couple hours. Not rent it, but they'd let me in there. Yeah, reserve for a couple hours. And I would go in and I would just do these jams. They had a 16-step sequencer, which was the most amazing thing. Yes. And so I would set up a bass line, and then I had the ARP Omni to play the chords, and then I would do a lead on the Odyssey or the 2600, and I would just come out like 3 hours later, glassy-eyed, and just the happiest person in the world.
Awesome. That sounds amazing. I forgot to ask, you owned a studio for a number of years too.
I did. Yeah,
I keep trying to wrap up, and I keep remembering all these amazing things.
So I had a project studio, and one of the things I learned in college was that I really was not entrepreneurial, and I started a studio with someone I went to college with as my partner. For me, getting into it was amazing because it was $9 a square foot per year, so I was spending about $600 a month to add 150 square foot control room with 100 square foot studio, which is tiny, but it was like I didn't have to have that stuff at my home. It was a place where I could, be messy, work on projects, go home, come back. And so it was great. But by the time I left there, which was 10 years later, the cost had gone up 4 times. Because, it's Manhattan. We were on 20th Street. And I was never the kind of person to hey, I have a studio. I need business. You guys looking for anything? Because I really didn't want to advertise and get people off the street that I had no connection to. So it was a completely word of mouth business, but I wasn't really selling it. So, and at that point, by the time I finished there, I'd already started teaching here. So I ended that in 2002. My partner stayed in that space for many years. And then eventually he moved as well. So
nice. Yeah. Well, just another thing that, maybe some of our students wouldn't know. That's amazing. Well, thank you. One of the main reasons I like doing this, and we're going to wrap up, but is to preserve this amazing legacy of our program. I love this place. It's amazing. And
thank you.
And so from everyone at Mercy, thank you for your amazing involvement in this since the second year. I think that's amazing. I think that's really cool.
My pleasure.
The institutional knowledge of just everything here. And yes, we've built many different studios, many different offices, many different students, but I think we all owe you a great debt. And so thank you.
Well, thank you. It's been a real pleasure to see it grow from very humble beginnings into a thriving program. And, we continue to tinker at the edges, and there'll be more beautiful things ahead of us. I've really, over the past few years, really tried to push the electronic music performance and composition, and it's pushing students out of their comfort zone often, but it's been a great experience for them. So, we continue to make the program better and offer more for our students, and that's really satisfying to have had a role in that.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Steve.
My pleasure.
That's it for the Mercy Music podcast, Mercy University Music Podcast today. Thanks, Steve.
Very good. Thank you, Sam.